Welcome back to the Pachter Factor. My wife is in the corner there saying hi. She's waving. She's kind of green. My dog just puked in the corner and I'm wired, so I couldn't get up and clean it. So my wife is going, ugh. Anyway, thanks for joining us on Pachter Factor. I hope you're watching on Patreon as Patreon patron. You're watching on SIFTD.net. You're getting it real time. If it's really inexpensive. If you're not a Patreon patron, consider joining because it's really inexpensive. It supports the production of these things. Again, I get nothing, but we could use the money. If you cannot afford Patreon or choose not to spend the money, a free way to support us is to link your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account. I get that there's only 100 million Amazon Prime members and only 60 or 70 million in the US. So the odds are, 1 in 3 or 4 that you're a member in the US. If you're not, I get it. But if you link your account, the instructions are in the description of the show. It takes about a minute the first time and about a second every time thereafter. Just remember to press the resubscribe button in that linkage. And every month you do it, we get $2.50. So help us out, please, because Amazon's willing to pay and we're willing to take their money. All right, let's get to our first question. This week from YouTube, from Big Will Dog 82, Adam Fitzpatrick. Is that all one person or is that two people? Oh, and Adam Fitzpatrick. Sorry, both from YouTube. Seeing how Sony and Microsoft's upcoming consoles feature basically the same CPU, GPU specs, does it seem we finally reached the console-agnostic future people have talked about? In the distant future, could we eventually see Microsoft or Sony just become another software developer? Where did that leave Nintendo? How do you see each company marketing their hardware to differentiate it when they're basically the same? We'll be at the console-agnostic future when the cloud and streaming technology can deliver an experience that's identical to a 4K, CPU, GPU console. 4K, lots of RAM, lots of GDDR RAM, lots of cores, the ability to process a game and have, some ridiculous frame rate. I mean, I really think we'll get to 4K or 8K and 240 frames a second, but that's right now that's a $50,000 GPU. But I mean, we'll get there. And when you can do that in the cloud, or when you put that into an Amazon Echo, or when your phone can process that, and I get GPUs run hot, so it won't be your phone. But when you can put that into a device that's commonly found in the home, ultimately I actually think that gets built into a television, and your TV is going to have a CPU, GPU combo. It's going to cost $20 to put it in, because that's where I think this is headed. Probably 20 years away, but it's going to happen. So yes, I think you eventually get to a console-less future where everybody streams games or downloads them to a device that is already in the house, like your TV or your Amazon Echo or your Apple TV. And then I think it really does just become a software game. And that's, probably like RCA used to make radios. And then RCA moved into televisions, and you guys probably don't even know what RCA is. Yeah. Radio Corporation of America. And then RCA decided to keep their radios from becoming obsolete. They would focus on radio production. And then to keep their televisions from becoming obsolete, they bought NBC. You probably didn't know that. This is probably in the 60s or 70s. But they bought NBC television network. And that ended up becoming NBC Universal and now Comcast. To keep their hardware from becoming obsolete, they bought into software. And that's right. What you said about Sony, Nintendo, Microsoft, yeah, they're either going to become software companies or their hardware businesses will go to zero. I do think Nintendo has an interesting competitive advantage because they make handheld hardware, and Sony tried for a while and flopped miserably. Now, ultimately, maybe our phone will be good enough, but I still think that dedicated hardware, handheld hardware, is portable. And I think we're a ways away, again, 20 years maybe it's too long, but we're a ways away from being able to stream to any device anywhere you are. That's going to require a lot of build out of 5G technology, and we're talking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars of infrastructure development. So I think the handheld, dedicated handheld still is going to have a place. And whatever you think of the Switch, it is, at a minimum, it is a handheld. It might also be a console, but it for sure functions as a handheld. So I think Nintendo's got a chance. Sony and Microsoft, not so much. And to give them credit, Sony saw this coming when they bought OnLive and Gaikai. So they clearly think they need to be in the cloud streaming business. Microsoft has seen this coming, I think actually probably since they created the Xbox. And when they built the Xbox, they also built a cloud business. And so you've got Xbox or xCloud, you've got Game Pass, you've got lots of things that kind of work in a cloud setting. I think Microsoft's cloud business is a multiple of the size of its game business. And I think they viewed games all along as a way to sell cloud. And I think that's that whole Sony-Microsoft collaboration on cloud. I think that they are prepared to become a cloud gaming company. And I think that Amazon's going to be a cloud gaming company. We've already heard Google's going to become one. So the guys who win in a commodity business like cloud are going to be the guys that have software that you need. And so yes, I think that things like the Halo and Gears franchise and the Forza franchise stay relevant. I think things like Days Gone and Uncharted and Gran Turismo and Death Stranding, make Sony relevant. And I don't have enough time to list all the Nintendo 30 different brands, that keep it relevant. So software is the way that these companies are going to thrive over the long run. Microsoft's value add, though, is it's also a really big cloud company. Sony's the one that's going to have the most trouble, I think, competing in that future. They have always been a hardware company. They made Walkman, if you remember, and televisions, and those businesses are crappy businesses now. And they've tried to become an entertainment software company by buying Columbia Pictures and TriStar and turning that into Sony Pictures, and by building out the Sony Games business by buying Polyphony Digital and Naughty Dog and whatever is now the rest of Sony Santa Monica, the God of War developer. And they've done whoever the Major League Baseball, the show developer in San Diego is. I can't remember the names of those guys, but they bought a bunch of developers because they're trying to stay relevant. They haven't yet bought Insomniac, but I guess that'll be the last one. Somebody should. So I think that they all understand that they need to be software companies. It's a really good question. And how do I see them marketing to differentiate? They're going to differentiate based on software. I mean, at the end of the day, I think Sony had a really modest advantage over Microsoft with GDDR5 RAM or something versus DDR3. I can't remember the numbers. I think that was it in the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. So there probably is something in the specs that one or the other has done that's more developer friendly, and that may induce people to put games on one system and not the other. But my bias is your question is right, that they're really identical and they're going to differentiate based on software. And so they'll sign exclusive deals like we saw with Spider-Man and Insomniac, or they'll develop their own software like we see with Gears of War and Halo. And you'll buy the console that has the software you want, and if you want it all, you got to buy more than one console. That's what it comes down to. I doubt that very many of the 30 million, 40 million Switch owners only have a Switch. I would say no more than 20% of the people who have a Switch only have a Switch. They have a PlayStation or an Xbox because they like FIFA or they like Call of Duty, multi-platform games that aren't necessarily on Switch. So, I think that these guys will differentiate because they're going to have the hardcore games like FIFA, FIFA hardcore, but the games that are next gen, and probably not on Nintendo. But again, you're not going to buy a PlayStation and Xbox unless you want to play Gears and Uncharted. Next question from Patreon from Kyle Calder. Do you think EA rebranding loot boxes as surprise mechanics will work? What do you think of recent Parliament hearings around loot boxes? Do you think publishers and investors would make more money in the long run if they eliminated loot boxes and microtransactions? I don't know. Do you think consumers are stupid? I mean, voters are stupid. So, look, the number of consumers who are stupid is in direct proportion to the number of voters who are stupid. So, I don't know, 20%, 30% of consumers have no idea. I think that the concern about loot boxes and the scorn for loot boxes aren't the same thing. So the concern is that it's a gambling-like mechanic, and the concern is that consumers don't actually know what they're getting when they buy a loot box. So, I'm playing this Empires and Puzzles game. I've asked you guys to all join my alliance. They do it, and if you look at what they do, they say guaranteed to get at least 2 of the following for like $6. And what the following are is 13 or 14 different things, and you need 2 of them. So how many times do you spend $6 before you realize that you're not going to get 2 of them? You're going to maybe get 1 if you do it 3 or 4 times for $18, and 1 artifact isn't worth $18. It's a loot box mechanic. It's a dumb one. I don't do it. I've actually tried it a couple times and went, wow, that was a waste of $6. So I don't do it anymore. And most people hate them. And the Chinese government has a rule regulation that requires that the odds of getting something are displayed. So if you're in, Destiny and you want to get a Gajala horn or whatever, that was Destiny 1. I know it's bullshit now. It would have to say, oh, loot box Gajala horn, chance of getting it 1 in 1,000. So if you're spending $1 and you have a 1 in 1,000 chance of getting it, I'm going to help you with the math here. It's going to take 1,000 tries to make sure you get one. $1,000 is a Gajala horn worth $1,000. So to answer your question, would they make more money in the long run if they got rid of loot boxes? Is there a moron who actually tried to get a Gajala horn 1,000 times and spent $1,000? Yes. That's the problem is people really are stupid. It's, raise your hand out there if you've bought a lottery ticket. You're stupid because only 50% of the money goes back to the prize pool. You're guaranteed not to make money unless you're one of those, 1 in a billion that gets lucky and wins. But we do it. And I don't know why. You know why we do it? Because it's $1. So the reason loot boxes work, if they're $1, they're easy to do. If in many games, they're like $2.50. They're not all $25. In this mobile game I'm playing, they're $6. So, whatever. As far as eliminating them altogether, the problem is that some of these games are built out with a loot box mechanic, and that's the only mechanic, and that is FIFA Ultimate Team. When you play FIFA Ultimate Team, you're buying a card pack. When you play Hearthstone, you're buying a card pack. And I honestly don't play Ultimate Team anymore. I think the card packs are cheap, like $5, but I don't remember. I think it's $5. So, the problem is that, there is no way to sell you stuff without doing that randomized card pack. You could just say flat out, if you want this player in FIFA Ultimate Team or you want this card in Hearthstone, $20, but then you have this whole pay to win. And so the loot box mechanic is the way the game pretends it's not pay to win. And only 1 out of 100 guys who buys a card pack is going to get the character anyway, and 1 out of 100 people who grind it out is going to get the character. And the idea is you never know. Now the best loot box mechanic I've ever seen was in Halo 5. Even though the rec packs had randomized loot in them, if you played the game 4 hours a week, you got a rec pack every week. And if you were the 4-hour-a-week guy, then you got 10 rec packs in 10 weeks. If you were me and you played 1 hour a week or 10 minutes a week and you couldn't keep up, you bought 10 rec packs at once. And nobody could tell if you earned 10 or you bought 10. I think that's a very fair mechanic, and I think people really didn't bitch at all about rec packs in Halo. So, I think that's the way around it. Make the earning of the items just as easy as spending money, and then just take advantage of the guy who just really wants something. We get some people who have no money, but they're willing to be the soldiers and get out there and do stuff to help the team, and there's guys who have money who will spend money to help the team. So I think microtransactions are essential. I think loot boxes are problematic. If you use the Chinese rule and you reveal the odds of getting a loot of certain loot in a loot box, that makes the consumer more informed. And I got to tell you, read a lottery ticket sometime. It will say your chances of winning the jackpot are 1 in 642 million, but people still play it. So you can tell people odds and they'll still come back. Then I don't think the government can complain very much about it. Our next question from YouTube from Matthew Suarez. At a recent investors briefing, Activision announced Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy sold 10 million copies. So it seems that Crash is now just as much a part of Activision's future as Call of Duty. Can you think of another dormant IP that publishers are fiscally sleeping on? I would say Crash is not like Call of Duty because it's not going to sell 10 million a year forever. I do agree that they can bring back dormant IP and do it once and they might be able to bring it back every 5 or 10 or 15 years and do it again. And I think the analogy to that is Disney and its animated film portfolio. They bring back Cinderella or Lion King or Snow White, or Sleeping Beauty every 10 or 15 years, and they sell a boatload of downloads and DVDs and downloads, and people buy the thing for their kids. And if you do it every 12 or 14 years, I know I bought stuff like that for my kids when they were small. Lion King, we owned it, and now they're 19, so they obviously want to see it again, but we own it from when they were 5 or 4 or something. So Disney's really smart about recycling IP. I think that what you saw with Crash Bandicoot is Activision's picking up Disney-type techniques. I'll tell you who's got IP that's got phenomenal value is Nintendo. And the other guy who's got IP that's got phenomenal value is Sony. There are really great franchises. What were we looking up? Super Bust-A-Move? Remember that? The baby? Wasn't that the game? Yeah, Super Bust-A-Move 2. There's some really cool old IP that I think people would pay up for. So I would say Sony and Nintendo primarily. Now Nintendo is odd about re-releasing stuff. So I bought Super Mario Bros. 3 and it was amazing. It was a 1990 game and I bought it in 2006 or 7 or something. And I paid full price. So they're already super smart about re-engineering their IP, and so I don't think we need to tell Nintendo how to do this because they're really smart about it. And I expect that they'll keep doing it. So they, number 1, by a lot. Sony, number 2, by kind of a lot. And then the other guys have pockets of cool stuff. Our last question this week from YouTube, from Elias Moreno Vasco. Seeing the success of Bloodstained Ritual of the Night from Castlevania's former head developer, do you see more famous creators going independent? Will they make significantly more money versus working for a large publisher? How much do you think iconic developers like Kojima and Miyamoto make per year? The Japanese guys for sure. So, Bloodstained is from a Japanese developer, and Kojima and Miyamoto clearly are Japanese. You've seen it in the US, like with Vince Zampella forming Respawn, but he took the money and went back to work for EA. So, $450 million. He doesn't have to make $50 million a year, because he got $400 million up front. I do think independents can thrive. We saw Bungie go independent twice. They signed a deal with Activision. Now they're back on their own. But I think the trend is actually that it's harder to be independent. And unless you have iconic IP, it's hard to get published. It's hard to get promotional budgets. So more of these guys are actually going in-house. Microsoft has bought, 7 or 8 studios. And they just bought Double Fine. They bought Obsidian. They bought In Exile. Those are all former kind of big name independents, and Microsoft bought a bunch of them. So I think the trend is to go in-house. How much does Kojima Miyamoto make? Kojima makes like nothing until he makes a game. I think when he was working for Konami, probably made, 10 million bucks for making a Metal Gear game, something like that. I think he had a bonus that was based on the success of the game. But the point was, how many Metal Gear games were there? 5, and over 20 years. So he probably made 40, 50 million bucks, and then I think he probably asked for more, and they said no, and now he's building Death Stranding, and has been for 5 years, and so it's eventually going to come out, and he'll make 20 or 30 if the game's good. Miyamoto, no, salary man. I think Miyamoto probably gets paid a couple $1 million a year. I doubt he makes a lot of money, and I think he's a simple, wonderful guy. I actually shook his hand at E3, first time ever.
Wow.
I think he probably works for less. He's like me, supremely talented, but willing to work for somebody else and let them make profits. I'm kidding. Miyamoto's like 1,000x me. I was just goofing. But yeah, there are guys who just don't want to deal with having to run their own thing, and they like this infrastructure support, human resources and accounting and legal support that you get from working for a company. So yeah, I think there are plenty of famous creators who could go independent. You saw like Michael Condrey and Glenn Schofield left Activision. Condrey immediately went to work for Take-Two, but he's running a studio under the 2K label, but he told me he's got the budget to have multiple teams working on multiple games. That's pretty cool. And I think that's something he wanted to do that he couldn't fund himself. Other guys like Harold Ryan from Bungie has probably Monsters and hasn't put a game out yet, but coming. I don't know what Amy Hennig is doing, but I guarantee whatever she produces is going to be great. But then Jade Raymond has gone from big company to big company to big company, and is not gone independent. So there's some safety in working for Google Stadia and running that business too. So she'll be great there. You can be independent and take a lot of risk and reap a huge reward, or you can be in-house and take less risk and reap less reward. But that's just a trade-off for us old people. We take less risk and we like to keep the reward. That's it for this week's Pachter Factor. Thanks for joining us. I'm hopeful that you are a Patreon patron. If so, thank you very much. If you're watching it on YouTube, you're getting it a week late, and you can link your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account. The instructions are in our description. It's quite easy to do. Once you've done that, just re-up it every month. So I hope this will be a reminder to just click the link and you can re-up. And if you do neither of those, at a minimum, please follow us on Twitter. I'm at Michael Pachter. Shane is at Dinfire. SIFTD is at SIFTD Games. And if you tell us that we guilted you into following, we'll retweet and you'll have one moment of fame. Thanks for joining us. Join us on Empires and Puzzles, Achilles TM. We need players. Talk to you guys next week. Finally, I am addicted to Empires and Puzzles. I was just telling Shane this. His website designer, Brent Phillips, is in my alliance. I want you to join our alliance as well. Achilles TM. We have 18 people, so we have 12, maybe 19 people. So we have 11 slots left. Let's fill it up. I want good players, so if you're really into Empires and Puzzles, we're going to rank the requests based on the guys who are better, more powerful. We're not booting any of our existing members. We're a really good group. But if you're in a full alliance, 30 people, we win a lot of free stuff. Free stuff's good. It helps you advance, gets you better at the game. I got to number 23 in the world last week. I'm now like 100,000th because I just focused on it for a day. I'm going to get to number 1 in the world just because I'm going to do it. So help me get to number 1 so I can brag about this on Pachter Factor.